What happens when country music's biggest personality meets? Morning television's toughest interviewer, and neither one backs down. The answer shocked millions of viewers and ended with security being called to Studio 1A. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment because this story gets wild fast. Blake Shelton walked on to the Today Show set that morning expecting the usual softball questions about his latest album and upcoming tour dates. What he got instead was Savannah Guthrie in full investigative journalist mode, armed with questions that would make a seasoned politician sweat. From the moment the cameras rolled, you could feel the tension crackling through the studio like electricity before a thunderstorm. Blake Shelton, welcome back to the Today Show, Savannah began, her smile perfectly practiced, but her eyes sharp as a hawk's. Let's dive right in. Your new single has been climbing the charts, but there's been some controversy surrounding the songwriting credits. Care to explain why 3 different writers are claiming they never received proper compensation? Blake's trademark grin faltered for just a split second, a micro-expression that Savannah caught immediately. He leaned back in his chair, trying to project his usual laid-back confidence. But something in his posture had already shifted. Well, Savannah, I think there might be some confusion there. My team handles all the business side of things, and I trust them completely. If there are any issues, I'm sure they'll get sorted out. That's interesting, Savannah pressed, pulling out a manila folder thick with documents, because I have signed statements here from all 3 writers saying they've been trying to reach your management team for months with no response. One of them, Sarah Martinez, says she's considering legal action. Did you know about this? The studio audience, who had come expecting a fun morning chat with their favorite country star, began to murmur quietly. This wasn't the Blake Shelton interview they'd anticipated. Blake's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and when he spoke again, his Oklahoma drawl had developed a harder edge. Look, Savannah, I came here to talk about my music and my fans, not to get ambushed with a bunch of legal mumbo-jumbo that, frankly, I don't think belongs on a morning show. People tune in to the Today Show to start their day with something positive, not to watch you try to play gotcha journalism with me. Savannah's eyebrows raised slightly, and she leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. I'm just asking legitimate questions about your business practices, Blake. Isn't it fair for your fans to know how the music they love gets made, and whether the people who help create it get treated fairly? My fans know exactly who I am, Blake shot back, his voice rising just enough that the boom operators had to adjust their levels. They've been supporting me for over 20 years because I'm real with them. I don't hide behind corporate speak or try to twist everything into some scandal. Unlike some people in this business, the last comment hung in the air like a challenge. And Savannah's professional composure never wavered, but her smile became razor-thin. Some people in this business. Are you referring to journalists who ask tough questions? Blake, because that's literally our job. Your job is supposed to be informing people, not trying to destroy careers for ratings, Blake replied, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. I've done hundreds of interviews, and I can tell the difference between a journalist and someone looking to make headlines off my name. Producer frantically waved at Savannah from behind the cameras, clearly hoping she'd steer the conversation back to safer territory, but she was locked in now. This was the kind of moment that defined careers in television. And she wasn't about to blink first. Let's talk about headlines then, she continued smoothly. Last month, you made some comments about streaming platforms and how they're hurting traditional country music, but your own record label has been pushing for more streaming deals. Isn't that a bit hypocritical? Blake's laugh was sharp and humorless. Hypocritical. That's rich coming from someone who works for a network that preaches about supporting independent artists while paying them pennies to perform on morning shows. How much did NBC pay that indie folk singer who performed here last week, Savannah? Enough to cover her gas money home. The question caught Savannah off guard, and for the first time her carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. We're not here to discuss NBC's business practices, Blake. We're here to discuss yours. Oh, so it's okay when you do it, but when I point out the same thing, suddenly it's off limits. Blake's voice was getting louder now, and several audience members were starting to look uncomfortable. That's exactly the kind of double standard I'm talking about. You media people think you can say whatever you want about us, but the second we push back, we're the bad guys. Savannah's producer was now making increasingly frantic gestures, but she pressed on. I think there's a difference between holding public figures accountable and deflecting from legitimate questions with personal attacks. Personal attacks? Blake stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward. Lady, you've been attacking me personally since I sat down. You came loaded for bear with a folder full of accusations, and you want to lecture me about personal attacks. The studio fell silent except for the low hum of equipment and the nervous shuffling of feet. Camera operators zoomed in instinctively, capturing every detail of the confrontation that was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Savannah remained seated, but her knuckles were white as she gripped her notes. Blake, I think you should sit down and we can discuss this like adults, she said, her voice steady, but with steel underneath. Adults. Blake's laugh was bitter now. Adults don't ambush people on live television with gotcha questions designed to make them look bad. Adults have honest conversations. What you're doing here isn't journalism. It's a hit job, and I'm not going to sit here and take it anymore. The words hit the studio like a thunderclap. Savannah's eyes flashed with something dangerous. And when she spoke again, her voice carried the cold precision of a surgeon's scalpel. A hit job like asking you about publicly documented disputes. With songwriters is standard journalism. If you can't handle basic questions about your business practices, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Blake stepped closer to the desk, his massive frame casting a shadow over the seated host. Basic questions. You call ambushing someone with legal documents and accusations. Basic questions. I've been in this business longer than you've been on television, sweetheart. And I know the difference between an interview and an interrogation. The condescending term landed like a slap, and Savannah's professional mask finally began to slip. Her voice dropped to a near whisper, but every word carried the weight of controlled fury. Did you just call me sweetheart on national television while trying to intimidate me? Because if you did, we're going to have a much bigger problem than songwriting credits. I'll call you whatever I want when you're treating me like a criminal. Blake shot back, his Oklahoma accent getting thicker with each word. You don't get to sit there in your fancy studio and act like you're some kind of moral authority when your own network has more scandals than a soap opera. How many of your colleagues have been fired for inappropriate behavior in the last 5 years, Savannah? The audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front row were recording with their phones despite the no recording policy, sensing they were witnessing television history. Savannah's co-hosts, who had been watching nervously from the sidelines, began moving closer, ready to intervene if necessary. My colleague's behavior has nothing to do with your business practices, Savannah replied, her voice steady, but her hands trembling slightly as she shuffled her papers. And using their mistakes to deflect from your own issues is exactly the kind of behavior I'd expect from someone who doesn't want to take responsibility. Blake laughed, but there was no humor in it whatsoever. Responsibility? You want to talk about responsibility? I've given millions of dollars to charity, supported countless up-and-coming artists, and brought country music to people who never would have heard it otherwise. What have you done besides tear people down for a living? I've exposed corruption, held powerful people accountable, and given voice to those who don't have platforms. Savannah fired back, standing up now to match his energy. Including those 3 songwriters you apparently forgot to pay. But I guess helping regular people doesn't matter as much as your image, does it? Those songwriters will get paid if they deserve it, Blake snarled. But I'm not going to let some morning show host who's never written a song in her life tell me how the music business works. You wouldn't last 5 minutes in Nashville. And you clearly can't last 5 minutes under basic scrutiny without having a meltdown. Savannah countered. This is exactly the kind of behavior those songwriters described in their statements. Aggressive, dismissive, and completely unwilling to accept any criticism. Blake's face was red now, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Meltdown lady, you haven't seen a meltdown yet? I came here as a favor to your producers because they begged my management for months to get me on this show. I could have gone on any program in the country, but I chose the Today Show because I thought you people had some class. Clearly, I was wrong. Class. Savannah's voice rose for the first time, her careful modulation finally cracking. You're standing over me trying to intimidate me on live television, calling me condescending names and attacking my network, and you want to lecture me about class. Sit down, Blake, before you embarrass yourself further. I'm not sitting down for anybody, especially not some self-righteous reporter who thinks she can ambush me with accusations and then act like she's the victim when I fight back. You picked this fight, Savannah, not me. The tension in the studio was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Camera operators were zooming in on both faces, capturing every micro-expression of rage and defiance. The audience was completely silent now, some people covering their mouths in shock, others leaning forward to catch every word of the unprecedented confrontation. Savannah's producer was frantically making throat-cutting gestures, trying to signal for a commercial break, but both combatants were too locked in their battle to notice. This had gone far beyond a professional interview and had become something much more personal and dangerous. "I didn't pick anything," Savannah said through gritted teeth. "I asked legitimate questions that any competent publicist would have prepared you for the fact that you can't handle basic accountability. Says everything about your character that I need to know." My character, Blake's voice, was now loud enough that it was probably carrying two other parts of the building. "You want to question my character when you make your living destroying people's reputations. When you take private business disputes and turn them into public spectacles for ratings. When you pretend to care about these songwriters, but really you just want to use them as weapons against me. I care about fairness and justice." Savannah shot back. "Two concepts you clearly struggle with. And I won't be lectured about ethics by someone who apparently can't even pay the people who help make his music. Those people will be taken care of through proper legal channels. Not through some carnival sideshow on morning television," Blake roared. "But you don't care about that because it doesn't make good TV, does it? You'd rather drag me through the mud on live television than let the legal system work. The legal system that those songwriters say you've been avoiding for months." Savannah's voice was ice-cold now. "The same system you're now hiding behind when confronted with the consequences of your actions." Blake took another step closer, now looming directly over Savannah's desk. "I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm standing right here taking your best shots while you sit there safe behind your desk throwing accusations like grenades. If you want to call that hiding, then I guess we have different definitions of the word." The confrontation had reached a boiling point that no one in the studio had ever experienced before. Security personnel were beginning to move closer to the set. Though they weren't sure exactly what they should do in a situation like this wasn't just a heated interview anymore. It was a full-scale war of words between two strong-willed personalities who refused to back down. Savannah stood up straighter, matching Blake's aggressive posture with steely determination. "You want to talk about taking shots? Let's talk about the pattern here, Blake. This isn't the first time you've had public disputes with collaborators. Your former band members, your previous management team, even some of your touring musicians have complained about similar issues. At what point do you look in the mirror and ask if maybe the problem isn't everyone else?" The question hit Blake like a physical blow. His face went from red to nearly purple. And when he spoke, his voice was a low growl that the microphones barely picked up. "You don't know anything about my relationships with my band or my team. You're just repeating gossip and rumors because it fits your narrative. Those people you're talking about left for their own reasons, not because of anything I did, their own reasons." Savannah pulled out another sheet of paper from her folder. "Because I have a statement here from your former drummer, saying you refused to give him credit on songs he helped arrange, and another from your ex-manager claiming you broke multiple contractual agreements. Should I read them on air, or would you like to address these allegations directly?" Blake's hands slammed down on Savannah's desk with such force that her coffee mug jumped and spilled across her notes. The sound echoed through the studio like a gunshot, and several audience members screamed. "You are not reading anything else from that folder on my Showtime. I don't care what lies people have told you or what fictional statements you've cooked up in your producer meetings. I'm done playing your games. Your Showtime." Savannah's voice was deadly quiet now. "This is the Today Show, not the Blake Shelton Ego Hour. And those aren't fictional statements. They're sworn affidavit that I can back up with documentation. If you can't handle the truth about your business practices being exposed, then maybe you shouldn't be in the public eye. Maybe you shouldn't be in journalism. If you think ambushing people with legal documents is ethical reporting." Blake fired back, his voice echoing off the studio walls. "What's next, Savannah? Are you going to start reading my divorce papers on air? Maybe dig up some old tax returns? Where does your crusade for truth end and your hunger for ratings begin?" Savannah's eyes flashed dangerously. "Don't you dare question my journalistic integrity. I've won awards for exposing corruption and holding powerful people accountable. I've risked my career to tell important stories that others were afraid to touch. I don't need to manufacture drama when people like you provide plenty of it naturally." Awards? Blake's laugh was harsh and mocking. "You mean participation trophies from other journalists who do the same hit job reporting you do? Congratulations, Savannah. You've impressed a bunch of people who make their living tearing others down. I'm sure your parents are proud." The personal attack on her parents was the final straw. Savannah's composure, which had been hanging by a thread, finally snapped completely. How dare you bring my family into this? My parents taught me to stand up for what's right and to not be intimidated by bullies who think their fame makes them untouchable. Something your parents apparently forgot to teach you. Blake stepped around the desk now, moving into Savannah's personal space. My parents taught me to respect people who deserve respect and to fight back against people who don't. Guess which category you fall into, sweetheart. Back off, Blake. Savannah's voice was steady, but her body language showed she was ready for whatever came next. You're on camera making threats against a journalist for doing her job. Is this really how you want America to remember you? I'm not making threats. I'm making promises, Blake snarled. Promise number 1, I'm never coming back on this network again. Promise number 2, I'm going to make sure every artist I know understands exactly what kind of ambush journalism you people practice here. And promise number 3, those songwriters you're so concerned about are going to find out that you use their legitimate concerns as weapons in your personal vendetta against me. Personal vendetta? Savannah was incredulous. I didn't even know who you were beyond your music until you walked in here and started acting like a spoiled child who can't handle criticism. This isn't personal for me, Blake. This is professional. But you've made it personal by attacking me, my network, and my family instead of just answering simple questions about your business practices. Blake was close enough now that the cameras couldn't get both of them in frame. Simple questions. You call character assassination. Simple questions. You came locked and loaded with every piece of negative information you could find about me, and you expected me to just sit there and take it with a smile. Well, here's a news flash, princess. I don't work for NBC, and I don't have to play by your rules. And here's a news flash for you, country boy, Savannah shot back. When you're a public figure making millions of dollars off fans who trust you, you don't get to hide behind your ego when someone asks you to explain your actions. Those songwriters deserve answers, and so do your fans. My fans know who I am, and they trust me because I've earned that trust over 20 years in this business. Blake roared. I don't need some talking head who's never created anything in her life to tell me about my relationship with my fans. You don't speak for them. You don't represent them. And you sure as hell don't understand them. Security guards were now moving onto the set, unsure whether to physically intervene. But knowing the situation was spiraling completely out of control, the head of security spoke into his radio, calling for additional personnel as the confrontation showed no signs of cooling down. I understand them enough to know they deserve better than an artist who apparently can't even treat his collaborators fairly, Savannah said, her voice carrying across the studio. And I understand journalism enough to know that accountability isn't optional just because someone is famous and used to getting their way. Blake turned toward the cameras, addressing the audience directly. You see this, folks? This is what passes for journalism. Now, gotcha questions, character assassination, and moral superiority from people who wouldn't last 5 minutes doing the jobs they criticize others for doing. Remember this the next time you watch the Today Show. Don't address my audience, Savannah snapped. If you want to have a press conference, book your own venue. This is my show. These are my viewers, and you're a guest who has completely disrespected this platform and everyone associated with it. The lead security guard finally stepped onto the set, speaking in a calm but firm voice. Mr. Shelton, I'm going to need you to step back. And lower your voice, sir. Blake whirled around to face the security guard, his eyes blazing. Are you kidding? Me right now? She's been attacking me for the last 15 minutes. And you want me to step back? Why don't you ask her to step back from her character assassination campaign? Sir, I need you to calm down and move away from Ms. Guthrie, the guard repeated, his hand moving toward his radio. I am calm, Blake bellowed, clearly anything but calm. And I'll move wherever I want to move until someone shows me a contract that says otherwise. This whole thing is a setup, and now you're bringing security into it like I'm some kind of criminal. Savannah looked directly into the camera, her professional training kicking in despite the chaos. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll have our cooking segment with Chef Maria Rodriguez. No, we're not taking a break, Blake interrupted, also turning to the camera. America needs to see this. They need to see how their trusted morning show hosts really operate when the cameras are supposed to be rolling. This is journalism in 2025, folks. Character assassination disguised as accountability. The director was frantically trying to cut to commercial, but Blake's voice boomed over everything. You want accountability, Savannah. Let's talk about NBC's accountability to honest journalism. Let's talk about your accountability to fair and balanced reporting. But I guess that doesn't fit your agenda, does it? As security moved closer and the chaos reached its peak, viewers across America watched in stunned silence as one of country music's biggest stars and morning television's most respected host engaged in the most explosive confrontation in daytime TV history. The fallout from this moment would be felt across both industries for years to come. What did you think of this incredible clash between two powerful personalities who refused to back down? Subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments. Do you think Blake Shelton was justified in his anger, or did Savannah Guthrie have every right to ask those tough questions? The debate is still raging, and I want to hear your thoughts.